Hey, True Believers. Today we are going over another timeless X-Men story. This is part 1 of Days of Future Past. This is Uncanny X-Men 141 from October of 1980. And I've read this book, just like with the Dark Phoenix saga, I've read the part 1s and 2 several times, and it still holds up. Even though this is supposed to be the future of 2013, even on Marvel's website it says you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt, as where comics have that sliding timeline, time scale, whatever you want to call it. Now, one thing I do want to point out is this was 141, where if you want to see what the original cover looks like, let's go to the back. And without all that True Believer crap on it, that's what the original cover looks like. And it's just harrowing. And that's why it's been homaged so many times, because it's so iconic, seeing all the X-Men slain, apprehended, and Wolverine and Kitty, they're fighting for their lives in this post-apocalyptic United States. Now, again, sorry, I got sidetracked on that antidote. The next part, 142, that's when the book officially started being called Uncanny X-Men. I think from, they never titled it Uncanny until 142. I think there was a few that had it on the trade dressing, but they still didn't reference it as Uncanny X-Men. Now the book opens, and I love the way the art team here shows the title of the book and just how brutal this is. Let's talk about who made this book. This is Chris Claremont and John Byrne, writer, co-plotters, and John Byrne was the artist. Terry Austin was the inker. Tom Orzanowski, letterer. Glynis Wein was the colorist. Louise Jones, who we all know as Louise Simonson, is the editor. Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief. So all-star freaking cast on these books from the old days, guys. This is why I always treasure these the most. Now Kitty, who is now called Kate Pryde here in the future, she's going to meet Logan. Now listen to what it says here about the future. It says, the street she's on is Park Avenue in the upper 70s. When Kate Pryde was a child, it was one of the swankiest neighborhoods in the city, if not the world. Now it's a slum, abandoned, derelict, dying, much like the city, the country, and the planet around it. Welcome to the 21st century. Now, as you can see, Kate's wearing an inhibitor collar and a green uniform, so you obviously right off the bat kind of get what they're homaging, or not homaging, but satirizing here. Now she falls into a trap, and there's these, she calls them rogues, so marauders that are surviving this post-apocalyptic world. They want to kill the mutant, take any supplies that she's hauling from mutant internment camps, and this is where we get our first appearance of an old man, Logan. And what's interesting is how Logan wants to take these guys out, but he punches them, and he's thinking, he goes, in the old days, I would simply cut this punk in two with my retractable claws. But doing that would tell the Sentinels that Wolverine's back in town. So the way the book's starting out here is Wolverine's planning a jailbreak, and they're kind of trying to do a last stand of anybody that's surviving here in this world. But they can't do it until the time strikes at midnight, because he's working for the Canadian Resistance Force. And what's happening is the rest of the world is tired of what the mutants are doing. And I guess the mutants or not the mutants, the Sentinels are going to make an attack on the rest of the world. So they're getting ready to nuke the United States. So here it says that First Avenue, Kate catches the Uptown Express tram to the Bronx. And you can see what type of world it is. I mean, even though it's not that well detailed, just look at that horse and carriage buses to show how far America the Great has come here. Now again, if this doesn't remind you of something from the 1940s, in North America, in the year 2013, there are 3 classes of people. H for baseline, human, clean of mutant genes, allowed to breed. A for anomalous, human, a normal person possessing mutant genetic potential, forbidden to breed. M for mutant, the bottom of the heap, made pariahs and outcasts by the Mutant Control Act of 1988, hunted down and killed with a few rare exceptions. killed without mercy. In the quarter century since the Act's passage, millions have died. They were the lucky ones. So in these first few pages, my God, how derelict and just how there's no hope, this hopeless hellscape that is the world. Now, as Kitty's allowed to re-enter her internment camp, as always, the first thing she sees is the cemetery. As always, there's a fresh grave. In this wide shot, the establishing shot, the absence of the colors, the symmetrical lining of the tombstones, the shadows, you know something's coming. And then if you guys have never read this, I know it's an older book, but if you haven't, spoilers. So if you want to see what happens, let's continue. If not, pause and go get a trade paperback or the original copies of this book. In turn, here are all the victims of the Sentinels. Some I knew, most I didn't. But in a way, we're all family. And again, another memorable shot from Days of Future Past. They even used this, I think, an homage to it in the X-Men the Animated Series. But you can see Johnny Storm, Sue Storm, Ben Grimm, Reed, Charles Xavier, Scott, Bobby, Warren, Kurt, Hank, Lorna Dane. Everyone she ever knew. That it just hits so heavy. You just wham, wham, wham. You're just punched in the face until you finally get to see who the survivors are. Here, Storm, Colossus. We get the first appearance of Rachel Summers and I believe Franklin Richards as well, which is Raiden Sue's kid. And it even says here, the 4 X-Men that remain, Logan, Kate, Aurora, Peter, they, along with Franklin Richards, last survivor of the fabled Fantastic Four, and his lady, Rachel. A telepathic kinetic compromises the core cadre of the anti-Sentinel resistance. And what's interesting is in this book, not once do they call her Rachel Summers. That came later, but this is her first appearance. And then, ironically, the tyrant that went against Magneto or Xavier for so many years, now is the one in the wheelchair leading the X-Men. Because this predates New Mutants, so this is one of the first times we get to see Magneto humbled leading the X-Men, saying that what we need to do, it needs to happen now, because if we don't, tomorrow the world will be at war. And the day after tomorrow, the world will be dead. So they found a way to disable their inhibitor collars, and we see that Rachel flings Kitty or Kate into the past. It says, before she knows it, Catherine Pride Rasputin is entranced, her soul flung out across the abyss of eternity. What happens next is anybody's guess. And then we cut to what would seem like a normal training day in the Danger Room. Kitty comes in to let the X-Men know that Kurt's going to be late to training. And just look at the dynamicness of the panels. That was one of the primary reasons I wanted to review this book, other than it being a classic, is compare this to Loki that we just recently went over, that Vote Loki book. How flat and horrible and bad joke that book was. Here, all the major drama right at the beginning of the book. Gorgeous shots, almost panel for panel from John Byrne and the art team. You just don't get this quality anymore, man. And how the X-Men almost, even though it's a training scenario, Peter almost sacrifices himself to save the young Kitty. Because at this point, she's barely been with the X-Men, I think maybe less than a year. She's actually training in the Danger Room for the first time. But when all's said and done, everyone's congratulating her for passing Xavier's test. Suddenly, reality twists inside out for Kitty. She comes face to face with herself, an older, sadder, wiser, stronger self. And then her soul, too, is flung out over the abyss of eternity. In her mind, she screams, and it knocks her into a coma. No one knows what happens. Like, did the test she just passed do something to her? Everyone's freaking out. But then she wakes up and she goes, Kurt, it's you, you're alive. And as you can see how she acts, and what I like here, especially the use of the paneling of the artwork here, is as we saw in the few panels before, we saw how Kitty was sheepish, timid. Now, the older version of her possessing her young body, she's more direct, more forceful. And then, I was like, who's Rachel? She's like, it's incredible. Rachel said she could do it, but in my heart of hearts, I believe she couldn't pull it off. And everyone's confused. Wolverine's like, she looks like a kid, but my senses, she smells like a woman, and everything about her says that she's different. And she goes in the same, that the assassination of Senator Kelly, who's running for president, and how here at this point, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are going to assassinate him, Charles Xavier, and Moira. And Storm saying, I can't believe this is too fantastic. And she goes, it's funny. Your older self told me that you would be the hardest to convince. And that's hard because Storm looks at Kitty as a daughter ever since the moment they met. When she passes out a couple panels ago, Kitty says, so help me if anyone has hurt my kitten, because I used to call her Kitten. So on the way to meet Xavier, like, we're going to take you to the Washington, D.C., where Xavier is testifying as a witness against this Mutant Control Act. She tells them what happens, how the Sentinels, in order to eliminate the mutant problem, decided that it would be better to just even kill non-mutant powered heroes, the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, heroes and villains alike. We fought, we lost, we died. And now seeing you all alive, oh God, I didn't think it would hurt so much. For a while, there are no sounds in the jet's cabin, save the child woman's anguished sobs. So after that, we cut to the future. The X-Men of the 21st century have escaped, but something terrible and awful happens here. And what I love is that Peter and Wolverine says, it's time that we did a fastball special. It's been too long. And Logan just goes to town on the Sentinels. And Claremont here explains how his adamantium is stronger than any type of armor that the Sentinels are made of. And it's no wonder that even these emotionless robots respect and almost fear him. That gives you chills. There's no bad jokes, no flat panels, no horrible, that's so funny. Shit's getting serious. Now here, as they get away, Peter brings a whole building down on top of the Sentinels. And it says here, the robot's screams are frighteningly human, but Colossus does not care. He was the gentlest of souls until the Sentinels slew his friends and his children, and thereby taught him how to hate. Wah! Seeing the juxtaposition of their younger selves to their older selves and seeing all these years of hate, intolerance, death, murder, senselessness has grown them cold. And before we can even get any more into that, then we get the stage set for the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. We see now how Blob was busted out of prison, Pyro's been recruited, Avalanche, and then of course Destiny's saying there's an X factor going on now that may mess with our plans. So Destiny said, or not Destiny, Mystique says, well, let's get to it. And then the fight occurs. And what I like here is Blob has been in jail since I believe the Stan Lee era of X-Men, because he goes, oh yeah, except for that wing bozo, you sure ain't no X-Men I've ever met. And I like how Wolverine says, that's right, fatso, we're better. Guys, holy crap. You know, the X team back in the day were on a roll. I mean, they just got off the Dark Phoenix saga. They just introduced Kitty, Dazzler, and then they just hit you right in the freaking face with Days of Future Past. This was a time to be alive during the X-Men comics. Compare this against that Vote Loki book we just read, or the X Factor Krakoa book, and see how far the quality of books have fallen. And why you want to read these, because it's almost like reading a novel or just like a short story. It's not just a comic book. You feel there's depth. There's so many layers to unpack with these older comic books. And that's why I still treasure these to this day. So guys, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and see if you can find the original 2-part issues. They may be a little pricey, but if you can swing it, do it. If not, then grab a trade paperback. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate it if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you can possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with you all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.